Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Mark and we're working on our dispatch timer tutorial. So this first video we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up our solution in our project, and then we're going to go ahead and set up our XAML for our UI. So let's go ahead and start another solution. Open it up. I would want to assume that you guys know how to do all this at this point. So let's go ahead and we're going to add some folders here. So let's go ahead and you see your IDE might look a lot different than mine. I have a lot of different stuff that I use. We'll go ahead and add a new folder. So let's do an images folder. Let's go ahead and we'll add a models folder, a view models folder, just in case we have view models later on, you want to expand on it. And then let's add a views folder. Now if you watch my previous video, we have model view, view model, and VVM, and basically that is what I'm basing off this solution also. So now that we have our folder set up, now we have our solution to work with. So now let's go ahead and we're going to open up your main window.xaml, and we're going to start entering some code in here. So basically we're going to set up our UI. What we're going to want is two buttons, and start and stop button, and hour, minute, and second. So basically that way our timer will start and stop, and then we're going to want a text box to be able to put our images in and change that image every time the timer ticks, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever interval we want. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to set up some grid.row definitions. So now the entire height, we're just going to actually go ahead and use our asterisk, which is going to make it even across the space that we're working with. So now we can just copy and paste that 2 more times. So basically what we want is like a 3x3 grid, and that's what we're going to do. So there's our 3 rows. Now let's go ahead and do our 3 columns. And if I could spell right, that would help. Here we go. Now with columns, it's going to be width. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to use the asterisk. That's going to keep it even over that space. Then we just copy and paste that 2 more times. XAML is pretty cool. I don't know how many of you guys have used it or not, but look at some markup examples. You can do a lot with it. We're going to do some data binding in here. If you haven't watched my first video on data binding, please do. That'll help clear things up a little bit more. But let's go ahead and we're going to add a button. So let's go ahead and we'll have the height of the button be 23. And then let's go ahead and we're going to have the width of it be 100. This will be our universal across the board. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign it a command. Now, and in that command is where our binding is going to be. And we're going to call that command a start timer command. So there's our start timer command. So what that'll do is that's going to start every time. So that'll go ahead and when we go ahead and click on our button, that'll actually execute in the code behind, because we'll actually have some relay commands processing our commands, which we'll set that up later on. So don't feel too overwhelmed. I will explain everything, and then you'll be able to do whatever you want with it later on. So now we're just going to put this in the center. We're going to give a margin. I don't usually like to use margins, but because of the way the box is here, we're actually going to go ahead and use a margin just to be able to lay it out kind of nicely. You can do whatever you want. You can do spaces here, however makes the code look good to you. And then we'll go ahead and we'll give it start as a name. So as you see with this, as you build your UI, things will pop up. The only reason I like to use a margin is because, you know, that 35, we're trying to put 2 buttons in that one box, so we want to make it look good. So we have to use the margins. You might want to think of a better way to do this. That way when you go ahead and you maximize it, you know, it's going to look nice. So if you don't maximize it, it's going to look a little odd. One other thing I just want to mention here, the height normally is like 350 in a default solution. So what I've done is I've just made 525 by 525 just so we have a nice even grid. So, you know, if yours looks a little odd, you know, that might be the reason. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add another button. Same thing, height. You know, we could copy the other button and paste it and change the parameters. You know, sometimes I find just typing is a lot quicker just because you know, sometimes copy and pasting you miss stuff. You know, so it's doer's delight, whatever you want to do. We're going to call this one stop timer command. So this is going to be our other command binding. Got some vertical alignment. This one's also going to be, this one will actually be bottom. And then basically, this is going to have a margin also. So we'll do 0, 0. Then the last one will be 60. Then we're going to give this the name stop. Alright, so now that we have our button, let's go ahead and we're going to add a couple of labels and some text boxes. Then we'll get to our text block. So we'll do our label, and this is actually, we're going to go ahead and copy and paste a lot of this. Once we have the first one, then we'll just do some renaming. So we're going to do grid.column because we want to define which row we're in, or which column we're in, sorry. So which column we're in. And so we're going to do our column row. So we want to be in the center column, so that's going to be number 1. Then our horizontal alignment, we want to go ahead and choose left. Then our vertical alignment will be top. We want our content, so this is what we want it to display to be H. So we could have this be hour, and we'll close it, and I'll show you a little bit more of an example here. And we're setting a margin here also, and this is just because of how I have this one set up. So, like I said before, I won't keep going on about it, but you can make this so your window and everything's more dynamic. So let's go ahead and make sure we close our label now. And let me wait for my studio to unlock up for whatever reason. Alright, now that we're unfrozen. Alright, so we have our label, and you can see it just says H up there. We could extend this if you wanted to. You could say, okay, hour. But for what I'm doing, I'm just going to have it do hour, minute, second, so HMS. So we'll go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and add our other text box. And so now let's go ahead and we'll give it a height. Define how high the text box is. You know, this, if you've been playing around with WPF for a while, this is kind of old hat at this point. You've done this more than once. So let's go ahead and our vertical alignment is going to be center. And then our horizontal alignment will be left, because where it is, and we want to make sure it's under hour. And then we're going to put it in our grid, as long as I can spell right here. It's going to be in column 1 because we want it to be right underneath hour. And then the text, we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to do some binding here. So we are actually going to bind it to our command, which is going to be timer tick hour. Which, you know, doesn't exist yet. We'll create it later on. And then we're actually going to have the mode two-way, so we want to communicate back and forth. And then our update source trigger is going to be property changed. And then make sure we go ahead and we close that. So basically that whole button's now set up. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And I like to do mine one at a time, because now what we're going to want to change is we're going to change this to minute. And then everything's going to kind of change here a little bit. So instead of left, it's going to be center. So we change it to center. Still going to be top. And then our alignment here, our vertical and our horizontal alignment, this is going to stay center, but our horizontal alignment is going to change to center. So we can change that, and it's still going to be grid column 1, and the margins are going to stay the same. But what we want to make sure we change is, instead of timer tick hour, it's now going to be timer tick minute. Alright, now let's go ahead and we'll do the next one. The same thing, instead of left, it's now going to be right. So make sure we change all our stuff. Still going to be top. We're going to change the content to S for seconds. Margin's going to be the same. And then we're going to have it be center for vertical alignment, which already is, and the horizontal alignment is just going to be right, because we want it on the right hand side. And then once again, you're probably already guessing, hopefully ahead of me, that it's going to be timer tick second now for our command binding. So there's our text boxes. So now what we're going to have is we're going to have a text block, and that text block is going to go ahead and have our image bound to it. So let's go ahead and we'll set up text block. This took me a while to figure out, scouring the internet, trying to find, some good examples of what I was trying to do. So, just goes to show, a little perseverance, searching, you'll be able to figure anything out. So I figured I'd just show you what I learned. So now we're going to go ahead and do not toe span but row span. Pardon me, it's kind of late here. So our row span is going to be 2, because we want to be down in the center. So we're going to go 2 rows. And then our column span is going to be all 3 columns. So we're going to go, start at number 2. So we're starting grid row 1, which is here. So this is grid row 1. And we're going to actually span to grid row 2. And then we're actually going to span across all 3 columns. So that's what we're setting up here. So we have our column span, and that we're going to say 3. And then we're actually going to give it a width. And this is basically just the size of our container. It's going to hold our image. Give it a height. And we're going to give it a vertical alignment. We're going to say top. And we're actually not going to close it, because we're actually going to put a text block dot background, because this is how we're actually going to display our image. So there's our background, and inside the background we're going to have an image brush. Don't worry, the squigglies will go away here in a minute. So our image source, and then basically that's going to be bound. So here's our binding, and we're going to call it current image underscore image. Basically, this is what I'm saying is our current image. And then let's go ahead and we're going to set the mode to 2-way. You'll see why when I talk about that, because I have another one that's named similar, and that's actually a little bit different. And then update source trigger, that'll be our property. Changed it again. And now what we want to do, I'm going to go to the next row just because I like to keep it clean, all on one page. And this is where we're going to say stretch. It's going to be fill, Basically, it's going to tell our image to fill that, and then go ahead and just close it. Well, there we go. Our block is set up for our image. So that's where we're going to store our image. So that block's all done. And now the last block we're going to do is just a text block to go ahead and just update some text. We can decide to say what the image is, playing baseball at the field, fishing, catch of the day, me hitting the home run, screenshot of my new game, screenshot of my new program, So let's go ahead and we're going to do another text block. So we're going to keep this underneath the image. So of course we're going to be in grid row 2. Column span is going to be 3. Width is going to be 250. Height 75. Just because we're going to just display some text. Going to have the font size change a little bit. Have to be a little larger. Have our text be wrapping. Text wrapping, wrap. And then our text. And then our text binding. And the binding is going to be current image. Of course, mode is going to be two-way, so it talks back and forth. I'm not going to get into the mode and how the updates versus trigger and everything is. If you want more details, please just look it up, and it's pretty cool. What you can do with it. So there's our XAML all set. The last thing we're going to do here, and just because we're working into it, we're actually going to go ahead and set our data context. Now, if you remember from my first series of videos, data context is basically the context where our data sits. So we want to be able to say anything we have happening on this page, we want to set the context to everything else. So to be able to do that, we would have to have a view model, which we don't have yet. So, but what we'll do is we'll actually set that up in the next video. So, but what I want to do is we're going to go right here and just say this dot data context equals new timer view model. And of course, it's going to say, hey, this doesn't exist. So let's go over here to view models, right click, go ahead and add, click on new item. Of course, we want it to be a class, and we don't want it to be class1.cs. We want to go ahead and change this. And what we want to do is just call it timer view model. So timer view model. So add that. So if you see here, still got a squiggly, which is okay. What we want to do is set that class to public. Public class timer view model. Go back here, save everything, and now right click, resolve, and just say using timer.viewModels, and there we go. So now our data context is set. So that just gets us set up for the next video. So now what happens is whenever we process a command in here, it's actually going to go through and it's going to point to our timer view model, and it's going to go ahead and it'll process any command in this file. So now any of our data binding later on is actually going to pass on through the timer view model, pick up that binding and process it the way we want it to. So please stay tuned for the next video. I don't know if I'm going to hammer another one out or not. It's kind of late. I got a lot of stuff to do. Get ready for California. But please stay tuned. I'm going to try to get this series done in 3 parts. We'll set up our relay command next video, so that'll be kind of a short video. But here we go. I hope you guys are excited. Hope you like it. Please leave feedback, and talk to you next time.